So good afternoon, everyone. Sorry for my English. Let's start by there. It's not my first language, not even French, so I will do my best. I'm Dayneris Brito. I'm Cuban curator, art historian as well, and researcher. I've been in Paris for 4 years now, where I'm currently taking part, responsible of collections from Jean-Michel Attal, who just opened his own art space in the 13th arrondissement Paris. I have been working with him for 1 year now, and it's in this purpose that we are here today, because in the frame of MIRA Art Fair, I have been the pleasure to collaborate and curate the exhibition Dessiner le Territoire, or Design and Drawing the Territory, which basically propose a cross-dialogue between two private collections, collection of Société, Générale, private banking, and collection Jean-Michel Attal, which I would like to start by saying there are two completely different collections formed and made with different perspective. One belongs to a private enterprise and the other one belongs to a private collector. So we need to understand that in order to also understand the purpose of the show. Here today I am with Aurelie Deplus, who is the responsible for collection Société Générale, and it has been working with Société for over 10 years now, maybe more. Yes. More than more. Alongside Aurelie, we have as well Matthias Pfaller, who is, he's a curator, a researcher, specialized in photography, contemporary photography. He's also an art historian, and currently he works in the Department of Photography of Centre Pompidou. Thank you so much, Matthias, for being here. And last but not least, we have Mebarek, who is a Bolivian-Algerian photographer and visual artist that has participated this edition in Les Rencontres d'Arles and has a very powerful work that resonates and dialogues a lot with exhibition. I will just present the show a little bit, and then I will pass the word to Aurelie and the rest of my colleagues in here. So Drawing the Territory was born after an invitation of MIRA Art Fair to do a kind of institutional exhibition. Because we went in Paris Photo, we wanted to also dialogue with the fact that the city was going through these very special moments for contemporary photography, and we wanted to base on the work of 10 contemporary photographers that you can see downstairs in the fair room when you enter to the right. So Designing the Territory was born from a very basic idea. What is a territory nowadays? And talking specifically about MIRA Art Fair, what is a territory when we talk about Latin American art? Is that we can talk just about one territory, or are we just talking about different territories that go through different kind of perspective, identities, and even, of course, process of colonialities as well? So in the show, we present 10 contemporary renewal photographers, so much as Philip Lorca di Coscia, Andrés Serrano, Cristina Garcia Rodero, Reinier Leivanovo, and I don't remember all the names, there are 10. But you may wonder as well why there are photographers and artists in the show that are not from Latin America. Well, that was the first challenge that I had while doing the show, because not even Jean-Michel Attal and Société Générale are necessarily connected with Latin American. So for me, as a curator and researcher, it was really a challenge to find this kind of hints and artists related to the Latin American space. So that allows me also to dig into the racine, the heritage of this artist presented in the show, and kind of try to understand the territory and that we consider today as the place in a very expanded way. So we will start talking with Aurelie, that maybe can talk to us a little bit more about the history of the collection of Société Générale. When did it start, and what are the main also conditions of acquisitions within the collection?
Okay. Hello, everybody. So the collection now celebrates this year its 30th anniversary. It was initiated by a man, our former president, in '95, when at that time we move from premises from the center of Paris near Opera, called a quarter called Edouard VII, to La Défense. And I don't know if you've been to our premises in La Défense, but it's really 2 towers, now 4 big buildings, made of stone or marble. You know, we call them Chassagne, Alicante, granite, and basalt. So, and that's why, you know, this man wanted really to give a soul to the building, and wanted for staff to have some artworks, you know, within the building. And his idea was, you know, whenever you go to work, you know, you go to your floor, because we have 34 floors in each building. You know, you enter and you just have one piece of art on your floor. And then when you move around, you have other artworks, more drawing or lithographies or series. So that's the first, his initial idea. And at that time, during the first 95 and 96, for 2 years, the bank acquired mainly some paintings and sculpture, mostly abstract, mostly from abstraction. And after, it stopped, and, there was a time, there was no more acquisition until 2003, where there has been, initiative, and the idea to continue to go on with this collection, to develop it, and as well to help and support, museum in France. So there has been a committee made, composed with general management of the bank and experts from outside the bank, and 1 or 2 people from the staff. Every year they change. And ever since, the collection has developed. Now we have 1,800 artworks, photography, sculpture, paintings, and drawings and lithography. And they are all within the bank, mainly in La Défense, in our, how you call it, in front of Galerie Lafayette, Agence Centrale, a beautiful building that I invited, She was there this morning. And we, where we have artworks as well. And on the east side of Paris, Les Dunes. And first, this collection, it was really mainly for staff, I would say. We even set up some conferences, art conferences every month. Initially, art history courses, and then now today's a monthly conference about exhibition, about mostly exhibition or initiative in the art world. And so, the staff is really not connected, but, it's just part of people everyday life, to have these artworks around them. And when I joined to take care of this collection, my mission was really to open it more to the public and to the art world as well. So the idea was really to organize some guided tour and visit. So now everyone can come and see the collection. I have a team of 4 people who is organizing guide tours around our building, and as well we so for public, for children, for really everybody. Sorry. And then we open it as well to institution. So we are lending a lot, to museum and unfair. Just that, you know, just like, you know, for this opportunity, I think it was really a great idea to show this these scenes that we haven't done, you know, before, because, for instance, for the present time, we have one artist showing in Petit Palais. We will lend to Pompidou Metz in next year, but we, you know, we really haven't done, you know, a focus on this scene, and it's really a great opportunity for us to do that. And we do as well some curation, some exhibition on regular basis with curators that we, you know, we meet, or just, you know, an opportunity regarding to a subject we really want to highlight or we want to develop. So last year it was about environment and biodiversity, and now we will work with another curator around, you know, more youth generation, it will be called, and we will really go outside, you know, our building, because now I think it's important, you know, really to share this collection, and, you know, since it's a living collection, you know, really share it with mostly, you know, with everyone. So
you were talking before about the impact that the collection has had and still is having in regard to older institution and the French and Parisian ecosystem. And my question now is, since we are in a Latin American context, yes. I mean, we are trying to represent in a Latin American context within France and in the frame of MIRA affair, there is a question that it gets imposed practically, and it is, what is the contact or the connection, if there is one, or which has been the connection with the Collections Générale and Latin American? Are you particularly interested by Latin American artists to have advisors maybe that are specialized in the context, or do you have further perspective of acquire new Latin American artists for the collection?
In fact, what we've been doing is, since the president I talk about, after we was a president, and this collection is living as well with the life of the company. So at the time, we had this large expansion of the bank, and the idea was really to buy some artworks from those territories. So at the time, we did buy some artwork from in Asia, for instance, and we had some people there as advisor, and we launched a prize, in fact, for young emerging Chinese artists. And we did that as well in Central Europe, where we have banks, you know, in Romania, in Czech Republic, and other countries. And we did that as well, you know, there was this expansion, you know, in Brazil, notably, but, you know, we did buy some artworks, and if you go downstairs where we will see those photography, surprisingly, they have been all made around 2007 and 2009, and we did buy them exactly around those time, and it was the time where, you know, there was a strong willingness from the top management of the bank to buy and to link the collection to the expansion of the bank in this area. Then, and it was photography as well. We did buy lots of photographies around this area, and then we balance a bit more, you know, towards paintings as well, ever since, and sculpture as well. And now we have, within the collection, we have half French artists, because, you know, we are a French bank, and it's important to support, you know, the French scene. And we are buying, you know, artists, international artists as well. So, for our next committee, there can be, of course, some artists from Latin America. It's open to.
At least maybe after this experience, maybe.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So I was thinking what you were saying, and basically we can all agree that basically a collection, either if it's private or public, is also an instrument of power in certain ways, right? And so I was thinking of Centre Pompidou, who is one of the most important museums of France and all around the world. And I would like to discuss with you, Matthias, about this idea. Well, I will present you first of all, because people need to know your work a little bit better. So Matthias Pfaller, even if he's very young, he has an amazing experience internationally. He was born in Germany. He living also in Zurich. So he had this all European Occidental experience, and even though he has been very involved lately with the Latin American scene, and especially with Chilean art as well. In 2018, he founded a non-profit project called MAPA Art, which main purpose was basically to defend and promote Chilean artists, not just photography, I think, but conceptual and contemporary artists. And since then, Matthias considers himself as well as an art historian photographer, but with a specific focus on Latin American. You have worked in very big exhibitions, such as the exhibition of Waldman Tigman that just closed its door at Centre Pompidou. But you have also worked with a lot of Latin American artists, after the case of the photographer I forgot the name, Claudia Andújar, which was a very important show as well. So since you have this interest as well in considering photography and contemporary art in general from a very non-colonial perspective, what is your experience? If you could talk to us a little bit about it, working now in Centre Pompidou in relation to matters such as power, legitimation, and photography at the end.
Yes, right, in medias res, because yes, the culture is a soft power, and so I'm German, but now I'm agent de l'État français, so I work for the French state, and when we buy artworks or when we get donations, they enter the national collection, and they can never ever leave the national collection, and the national collection is a collection for the French people. And the French state puts a lot of emphasis, in my view, on culture. Maybe you could say it should put more emphasis on culture, especially now, especially on the certain political developments. But there's more emphasis on culture than in Germany, for instance. You have les instituts français all over the world who do a lot more programming than our Goethe institutes. And then the Pompidou is doing its own global campaign with a lot of branches. So it started with MES, which was the Territoire National, but then we have Malaga. We will next year open in Brussels. We already have a sister institution in Shanghai. Then we will have Seoul, South Korea, New Jersey, United States, and Iguazu in Brazil. So we have the backing of the French state, and then we also put in our own clout and exercise soft power, which is very, very exciting at this moment, but you can also look at it maybe critically, because I want to come back from what Aurelie you said last about your collection being half French and half artists from everywhere. This is the same. We have such a position that we can maybe influence or contribute to trends all over the world with our visibility, and then also decide what might be French, because I was thinking a lot about what our president Laurent Lebon recently said, that the new Pompidou, once it is renovated and it reopens in 2030, that it will be focusing a lot on the French scene. So I was thinking, what does it mean for our initiatives all over the world? And they are not endangered, so don't worry, because already what we do with Prix Marcel Duchamp, because I looked up the last winners and finalists. It's also for the French scene, but when you look at the people nominated and the winners, they are very multicultural in the best sense. So the question is, how do we define the French scene? And maybe to include Daniel right away here, because I would say that Daniel, who's been living here for several years, you specify, I would say that Daniel is also the French scene. So there's a lot of flexibility in this power, and we should think how we use that.
Because you are specifically working in the Department of Photography, right? If I don't make a mistake. And continue with this discussion and this answer, if there is a possible answer. What do you think that the collection, the permanent collection of contemporary photography at Pompidou reflects this kind of tensions regarding to identity and to geopolitics nowadays?
I think that's a kind of an easy question, because we let artists do the work, because they propose these issues, and we look for interesting art, and then we automatically come into this area of all these questions. And even for projects that are not specifically yielding to answering these questions, I would say our exhibition Corps à Corps 2 years ago, but it was a partnership between our collection and the collection of Marine Kamitz about the portrait and the body, was very much about these topics, because when you talk about portraits and the body, it's about identity. And I think the exhibition led a lot of room to the artworks to speak about these issues. And then they come into the collection, and with every project that we work on, that comes through. So actually, we depend on the artwork, and we do a little bit of the rest of the curating. But there's one example that I recently come across in my daily work. Our collection is so big, I don't know every artwork, and sometimes I just discover artworks that are super topical for this session. For example, this is Miki Kratzmann, an Argentine-born artist who emigrated to Israel in the 1970s, and he works on the visibility of territory in Israel, and especially the occupied West Bank, because he found that the satellite images on Google Maps, for example, of the West Bank, they are in a very low resolution compared to the rest of the world. And so and this is a political decision, this is a political influence. And he then used drones for his art project to map the West Bank. And then what we see in his pictures are, he also leaves a lot of discovering to ourselves, but he gives us clues, for example, villages that are no longer there. So nomad villages of the Palestine people that disappeared. You see the traces. So this is a really big question that we could collect thanks to an Israeli patron. By the way, I think this is very important to say too. So the artists bring us all these questions.
Of course. I was thinking just one last question, an easier one. So you have this kind of double perspective in your career, right? The institutional part, the independent part as curator, but also your European Occidental background that you are able to mix with the North-Occidental background. And again, I insist in Latin American context because we are in events dedicated to Latin America. So looking back to your career and all your experience that you have already, do you consider that we can talk for a space nowadays for Latin American art in Paris?
That is the most difficult question of all, because I think this question I think we have to ask what is Latin American art, and then it all falls apart.
Exactly.
Because if you think about Gerardo Mosquera in the 90s, already heavily invested in that topic, when the art world and the art market that is the Western centers discovered that there's other things going on in the world, and they branded many different cultures and artists under this Latin American branch, which helped to promote them, helped to get them out into the world, but which also subsumed them under one umbrella. Then we had the same problem again. I like Joaquin Barrientos, who in 2010 published a book about the same question, also saying there's the high risk of exoticization and of losing the specificity of what is Latin America when it is inserted into the global art circuit. But also stating that this is a big chance for Latin American artists to promote their work and to get their messages out. And now today, it's I think Latin American art is a flexible enough label so that we can work with it. People know that there are different countries, different cultures, different histories. I think in the past 30 years, there's been a lot of education going on. But now, maybe it's about going a step further and being more specific than just Latin American art, if it's possible. At the same time, we have other art fairs in Paris, like Asia Now, MENA, also known as Africa, I think is the third one. And it stays a bit within the big geographical categories, but I think we are ready maybe for the next step, but then we fall into this trap of like identity cultures in the communities that we then all work against each other. So I think this is, we have to figure out good ways.
It's very interesting that you mentioned the word identity, because I was thinking the same thing as you. I think we need to start by asking ourselves what is identity and what is Latin American identity. And I was also thinking about Mosquera when he created the Bienal de La Habana in 1984, and he mentioned since the 80s that basically Latin American was a fragmented identity. We can't consider Latin American just as one identity. And that helps me a lot to pass the word to Daniel, that I would talk with us, today about his own work. And so Daniel, you are a photographer, you are also a visual artist because you do video installation. You has worked a lot actually with a matter of identity, also coloniality or post-coloniality as well, displacement, hazine, how can I say in English, heritage, etc. But while watching and seeing your work, I was thinking that basically in the Latin American context, I could say that the Latin American photography has always been very involved with this kind of, how can I say, this kind of character, a little bit like quiche. I mean, from when we look at Latin American photography from Europe, we're always very involved to this kind of perspective colonials that we bring to Europe in order to analyze contemporary photography, right? So how do you deal with this topic of having actually a double identity as well, a double nationality as well, and being now based in France within your work?
Yeah, I mean, to answer the question briefly, so I'm an artist I grew up in La Paz in Bolivia, but I am Bolivian on my mother's side and Algerian on my father's side, so it's a quite specific mixture, and I've been living in Paris for 9 years. So basically in my work you can see, or at least I have felt that I have both an interior perspective because I work in Bolivia, but also exterior perspective because I've been living abroad for more than a decade, and also part of my family history is from another country. So this has given me like a certain distance, which I find has been good to look at things with more of amazement when I'm in Bolivia. And so I prepared this presentation showing you different bodies of work. This one is my latest project that I showed this year at the Rencontre d'Arles for the Discovery Award, and basically very much related to how do you draw the territory, which is the theme of this discussion. Basically, I worked in the outskirts of La Paz, the capital, in a city called El Alto, which is a place where there's most of the population that identify as part of the Aymara indigenous group. So there's big socioeconomic and racial cleavages between La Paz, the capital, and this other city that's right next to it. And so this project started by thinking about how to document this space, how to do photography in this area, given the big gap that exists between some people in La Paz and the inhabitants of El Alto, and even myself being an outsider to this specific part of the city. So what I decided to do was, in a kind of playful gesture, every Thursday and every Sunday there's a street market that opens up. It's one of the biggest informal markets in Latin America. It's humongous. And I decided to put a photo studio in the middle of the street with a sign that said "Fotos gratis," so free photos. And I just waited for people to simply, who were passing by, to sit down. They were invited to have their portraits taken, and I had a printer on the spot, so I was able to give them the photograph. So it was about how do you kind of create a dynamic around photographic portraiture that is less extractivist. So trying to create, or at least thinking about the dynamics at play when you make a portrait in such a context. So there's different kind of examples of the work you can see here. And what's important also to note is the image you can see in the backdrop. So that's actually the main mountain you can see from different parts of the city. It's called the Ilimani. And I wanted to use a symbol that people would feel proud to have their photographs taken with. So you see different examples here. And actually one big component of the work was a video piece that documented the process, because it wasn't so much about the resulting portraits. It was about starting a discussion about what does it mean to take a portrait in this context. So it was about the process indeed. So this is some installation views you can see of the work in Arles this year. And here you see the 2-channel video installation, which showed different things. Like what I liked about this project, which for me, I often say like, I've never felt so much as a photographer like in this moment, because I was kind of giving a service to people. So like photographer, not as an artist, but as a profession, because I had like a portable camera around my neck and I was just kind of giving away photos for free. And this is actually how a lot of professional photographers work in the public space in Bolivia. People who are there during graduations or other ceremonies, parties, they'll have a portable printer around their neck and they'll be like, if you give me 10 Bolivianos, I'll give you a photo of you for a souvenir. So I was kind of using the same codes. I was interested in kind of addressing popular forms of photography, and a big reference of this project was actually the long history that exists in Latin America, but also in Europe, but in Latin America until more recently, of itinerant photographers. So it exists under different names in Latin America. There were the minuteros, for instance, in Argentina, or the ambulantes in Guatemala. There were those photographers who worked in the public space with wooden cameras, and actually a lot of people didn't have access to sedentary photo studios to have their ID photos taken. They had to go to the public square to have this man have a photo taken by this person. So I pay tribute to that history of photography as well through my work. You can see a bit more here. And this is some contact sheets which show a little bit the process of how many people passed by. I
think it's pretty clear, but so how do you translate the notions of belonging to your photography, being an artist that is also an immigrant and doesn't live anymore in your country where you were born? How do you translate these notions such as belonging and identity and territory?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good actually way to continue with this project, because this is my longer term project, which is still ongoing. And basically it's been about my relationship to the city where I grew up, but that I've left for more than a decade ago, and how I try to renew with the different areas of the city, kind of more in a different perspective, more inspired by walking and ideas of psychogeography, so the idea of wandering and getting lost in the city. So more thinking about photography as a very subjective practice. So that's something that's very important, like given this idea that I'm like, not this idea, this fact that I'm like from there, but I'm also been living abroad for a long time. I don't have this pretension to want to communicate objectively about this territory, about the spaces. So I'm more interested actually in thinking about photography as a literary practice. And I'm just gonna show you like a few photos of this project, which is, let's say, like my more never-ending project that I have.
The title of this project is very smart as well.
Yeah, that's actually a good important element. Actually, the title "Andes donde Andes" it means wherever you may go, and it's actually from a quote that's quite interesting because it was from a painter, like a Bolivian painter who was exiled in the 80s in Paris, and he wrote in a painting. Andes donde Andes, vuélvete a los Andes. So he's playing on the word of Andes as the Andes, the mountains, and Andes as walking. So the title translates to, like the quote translates to, wherever you may go, go back to the Andes. So there's a very nostalgic feel about missing your territory. So this is why I titled the project Andes donde Andes. And there's this recurrent image of the mountain that kind of comes back in the backdrop of a lot of photographs. There's this idea of mixing a vision of this territory where there's a lot of tenderness I have towards this place, but there's also a very harsh reality that is just always there. And here you can see the topography of the city, which is quite incredible, surrounded by the constant presence of the mountains. And this last photo, which is a bus. Am I arriving to the city or leaving it? I'm not sure.
Yeah. If we come back, for example, to this picture, it makes me think a lot about something that we have discussed as well, which is also the Latin American urbanism, or what we consider Latin American urbanism. And I think you work a lot with this concept of informality, right? And how can you imagine as well, through your pictures, through your photos, an imago of a city, of a Latin American city, or more specifically the city you were born. So can you talk us a little bit as well about your the relationship you give it to the architecture within your photography?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, a big influence, as I mentioned, is ideas of space and urbanism. And as you can see, La Paz is an orange city. So basically, there's this practice that a lot of people don't paint their facades, because if a house is not considered to be finished, you pay less taxes. So it basically means that all the houses remain like in construction process. And it's been like my methodology is to walk. So also it speaks to the title Andes on Andes. And there's actually like one new project that I've been working on, which is a bit more different. That it doesn't have a title, but I'm showing just a few stills. It's a new film that I'm working on that I shot on 16 millimeter. That is actually about the fabrication of bricks. So brick being the main material that is used to build the city. And so I became fascinated with an area in the periphery of La Paz where they extract, it's actually quite incredible, they extracted the earth straight from the mountain, which then becomes the kind of raw material to turn it into these bricks. Then they cook it on this very, let's say, like artisanal ovens. And then what happens is that because they extract so much earth from the mountain, that eventually the mountain will flatten. They're changing the natural landscape. And then the bricks that they're making with that earth will then be used to build on that flattened landscape. So it's kind of like this very interesting process. And this is what I've been working on. So definitely much trying to dive a bit deeper into how the city is built and thinking about also labor as a choreography. So it's a video piece that shows the repetition of movements. This is an oven that looks like a little bit like hell, a little bit. And this last image of the mountain with the bricks. And just kind of like I was thinking about the theme of this discussion, and I remembered a quote that I really like, so I just wanted to share it, which I think is an interesting way to think about territory and identity in Latin America. So this is Nicanor Parra, who was a Chilean poet who wrote very beautifully this sentence, creemos ser país y la verdad es que somos apenas paisaje. So we think we're a country, and then the truth is we are barely a landscape.
Question for the Pompidou, the Centre Pompidou, because, well, I'm also Latin American. I was born in Colombia, but I've been living in France since I was 18 years old, and I studied art history, and the Pompidou has been like a second house for me because I go to all the exhibitions and everything you do. I'm always following what you're doing. But I have always been very astonished with the lack of Latin American art and the way it's always presented. I was always, because it's not the same with the Asian art. And it's not the same with the American art that's supposed to be, in my point of view, the art that you support the most, North American art. And when you look at the history, political history with Latin America, France has always been very linked with the, what you say, les pays non alignés, and with Latin America, with Charles de Gaulle. There has been a history around that has made France and Latin America very, very, let's say, compared to Spain and Latin America, there has always...
Well, I hope that while I'm working there in the next few years or decades, that this will also develop. Because there are initiatives like the Latin American Council, part of the Friends of the Pompidou, Les Amis, who support acquisitions, and we work with Paulo Miada as an advisor for acquisitions. So there are infrastructures, but I also think it's not as stable as maybe at MoMA, who have the CMAP, and they send curators around the world on an almost daily basis. Actually, the MoMA curators told me that there are only 2 this year, Paris Photo, because the rest they are in Mumbai, in the Philippines, all over the place. The major institutions, they have that. We had that with specific curators. I think of Catherine David, Christine Marcel. Now, for example, we have Frédéric Paul, who works on Latin America, and Marcella Lista for the Asian Pacific region, but it's not as institutionalized and regularized. And I think that the important thing also for us is because we have this collaboration with China, for example, with the Westbund, and it's the same, so there is a bigger connection, and we have private sponsors, Chanel, for example, who support acquisitions there. But then it's also our task to make exhibitions with these artworks and promote that further. The thing is about, and I think that's the same question about what is Latin America. So we focus on this, but we should also focus on the Middle East, North Africa, Sub-Saharan Africa, on Asia Pacific. It's a lot because this art world dynamic also demands us to always colonize new territories in a way, because I think although we try to be decolonizing things, there's always some colonization going on. So we are not well staffed well enough to colonize all the territories for now, which is kind of demanded, but then we should do it well, and it's very complex.
I don't want you to think we're ganging up on you. However, I had to smile when you said that Pompidou is going to focus even more on French art, and you are focusing on the Duchamp Prize. Now, you know that Duchamp changed his nationality to become American. So isn't that a little bit ironic?
The Pompidou tried to reclaim him as French.
Well, they can try all they want, but... Why do they say that they're French and then they put Duchamp as the leader of this?
I think that is this mishap or this not mishap, maybe this misconception or this bending of the truth is perfect for what maybe we actually mean with the French scene, because we cannot, because we have so much space in the Pompidou. We have so much space all over the world. I think French artists honestly cannot fill all that space, so we necessarily need to interpret the term French in a very wide way. So, and then we also interpret Duchamp as still being French, although then he changed this nationality to the United States.
And just to specify, like Matthias said, French scene, not French as nationality. Like Pompidou and all the public policy in France supports the French scene, which includes all kinds of nationalities who are artists based in France. And usually the criteria is 5 years. So as a Bolivian artist with a Bolivian passport and only that passport, I've been able to benefit from public funding, for instance, from the Ministry of Culture to do the projects that you saw. So when Pompidou's policy is going to be about focusing a lot on the artists that live in the French territory, but not necessarily that have a French passport.
Okay, but it's still not Duchamp. I mean, he didn't even get Nude Descending the Staircase was not even allowed to be shown in France in 1912, and that's when he left. So there's really, you know, you can't give him the 5 years. And speaking of Dada, I mean, the Latin America or Mexico, Duzeyas. You don't even talk about Duzeyas, and he invented Dada. He was from Mexico.
Yes, I mean that. There are so many chantiers, so many building sites that we could. I mean, we had a big Dada exhibition curated by Laurent Lebon, but that did not have this global outlook. But there have been a lot of global surrealism exhibitions. That's been a theme. So I think it's just waiting to be worked on. So much work to do. This is the only thing I can tell you. And I don't want to justify, I don't want to say like we do everything perfectly. So I do say we have so much work to do.
Thanks, Matthias. I think